Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something right now. What are you tolerating in your life? Be honest. What are you settling for? Is it mediocrity? Is it just enough? Is it that quiet whisper that says, this is fine, when you know deep down it's anything but fine? Let me tell you something straight. Your life is a direct reflection of the standards you hold yourself to. Not your goals, not your dreams, not your hopes, your standards. If your standard is, I'll try, you'll get a life full of maybes. If your standard is, I want to be healthy, you might hit the gym until it rains. But if your standard is, I'm the kind of person who takes care of their body no matter what, that becomes your identity. That becomes your life. That's a standard, not a wish. And here's the kicker. We don't get what we want, we get what we must have. See, when you raise your standards, you turn your shoulds into musts. I should lose weight. I should start that business. I should stop procrastinating. Should is weak, must is power. Must gets results. You want to transform your life? Don't just change your environment. Don't just change your schedule. Change your standards. People always ask, how do I become more confident? Raise your standards. How do I attract better relationships? Raise your standards. How do I create financial freedom? Stop living like it's optional. Make it non-negotiable. Raise your standards. Look, when you decide that you're no longer available for average, when you decide that you will no longer tolerate excuses, stories, or limitations, your world shifts. You stop accepting crumbs when you were born to feast. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for perfect timing. Make the decision now that your current standard is done and you're stepping into a higher one. And let me be real with you. It's not always going to be comfortable. Raising your standards means facing yourself. It means breaking patterns. It means having the courage to say, I'm done living beneath my potential. I'm done playing small. I'm done pretending like I don't know what I'm capable of. Because deep down, you do know. So here's your call to action. Starting today, right now, decide. What are you no longer willing to accept? What are you no longer willing to tolerate? What are you no longer willing to be? And then declare what you will become. Declare what you will do. Declare the standard that will define the rest of your life. Because once you raise your standards, you raise your life. Your life is a reflection of your standards, not your goals. Most people go through life thinking that their goals determine their future. They write them down, put them on vision boards, repeat affirmations, and get a temporary high from imagining what could be. But goals are only intentions. They are aspirations that live in the realm of someday. Standards, on the other hand, are what you accept, what you tolerate, and what you demand of yourself in the present moment. Your current reality isn't built on the things you say you want. It's built on what you've been willing to settle for. Think about it. Everybody wants more. Everyone wants to be happier, healthier, wealthier. There's no shortage of dreams. But very few people are living the life they say they want. Why? Because for most, their standards are not aligned with their goals. You can't say you want to be in phenomenal shape, but have the standard of skipping workouts every time you're tired. You can't say you want to build a business empire and hold on to a standard of procrastination or comfort. If your standards are weak, your goals will never have the foundation to stand on. Look at any area of your life right now, your body, your finances, your relationships, your mindset. Whatever is happening in that area is not a result of what you hope for. It's a direct result of what you've been willing to tolerate. If you tolerate chaos in your schedule, you'll have a disorganized life. If you tolerate people disrespecting your time, they'll keep doing it. If you tolerate being broke, making excuses, being tired all the time, guess what? That becomes your norm. And once something becomes your norm, you stop challenging it. The secret to lasting change isn't about setting bigger goals. It's about raising your standards. It's about saying, this is the new minimum. This is what I accept from myself. Nothing less. That shift changes everything. When you draw the line in the sand and say, I will no longer tolerate this, a different version of you starts to show up. You stop rationalizing your bad habits. You stop making room for the old version of you to stick around. What most people don't realize is that standards are identity-based. Your standards come from what you believe about who you are. If you see yourself as a high performer, you'll show up as one. If you believe you're disciplined, you'll behave in a disciplined way. But if your identity is rooted in limitation, I'm just not consistent, I'm always overwhelmed, I never follow through, then that identity will keep you locked in a cycle no matter what goals you set. You'll keep hitting that same ceiling over and over again until your standards change. This is why people can spend years in personal development without real transformation. They accumulate knowledge, attend seminars, read books, but their standards stay the same. And because their standards don't evolve, their life doesn't either. You see, real growth doesn't happen when you learn something new. Real growth happens when you stop tolerating the old. When you look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm done being this version of me, then you're ready to step into something greater. That doesn't mean it's easy. Raising your standards will piss off the part of you to get the comfort. It will trigger resistance. You'll feel the pull to go back to what's familiar. But that's where the breakthrough lies. The tension you feel isn't a sign to retreat. It's a sign you're pushing past an old limit. And every time you choose your standard over your comfort, you reinforce a new identity. That identity begins to shape your behavior, and that behavior begins to shape your results. It's the difference between a person who says, I want to be successful, and someone who says, I don't accept anything less than success. One is a wish, the other is a standard. And standards are powerful because they activate a new level of urgency. They don't give you the option to keep living in the gap between where you are and where you want to be. When you raise your standard, you collapse that gap with action. You stop playing around. You stop indulging in the luxury of later. You do what needs to be done, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's hard, even when nobody's watching. Because that's the thing about high standards. They don't require an audience. They don't need motivation. They're internal. They're self-enforced. They live in the quiet moments when nobody is checking on you. They live in the choices you make when you're tired, stressed, or unmotivated. They live in your willingness to do what others won't. That's where transformation begins. And don't confuse standards with perfection. Raising your standards isn't about being flawless. It's about refusing to settle. It's about catching yourself quicker when you fall. It's about recalibrating faster, getting back on track without spiraling into guilt or shame. It's about becoming ruthlessly committed to your highest self while still giving yourself grace as you grow. This shift creates a ripple effect across your entire life. You start attracting people who operate at a higher level. You stop wasting time on things that drain you. You stop entertaining low-energy conversations, environments, and habits. Everything elevates when you do. Your energy changes. Your focus sharpens. Your confidence builds. Not because you've arrived, but because you've stepped into alignment with who you really are. And here's the real truth. Most people are not living even close to their potential. They've settled into a version of life that's far beneath what they're capable of, and they've convinced themselves it's fine. But fine is the enemy. Fine keeps you stuck. Fine keeps you average. If you're feeling frustrated, stagnant, unfulfilled, it's not because you're broken, it's because your standards are too low for the life you say you want. The moment you say no more, everything begins to change. Not when circumstances shift. Not when the timing is perfect. Change happens when you raise your internal standards so high that the old way of living becomes intolerable. You don't need to wait for a crisis, rock bottom, or some external force to force you to level up. You can decide. You can raise the bar on how you think, how you act, how you speak, how you carry yourself. You can become the kind of person who no longer accepts excuses, distractions, or average outcomes. And when you do, the world starts responding to the new version of you. because the world always mirrors back the standards you hold. You don't get what you want, you get what you must have. This is one of the most powerful, life-changing truths you can embrace. Most people live in the realm of want. They want a better body, they want financial freedom, they want more meaningful relationships. But the problem is that want is weak. Want is a desire, a wish, a dream that feels good to think about, but lacks the intensity to move you into action. Want is what keeps people stuck in a loop of hoping and wishing without ever seeing meaningful change. When you only want something, your motivation is contingent on feelings, circumstances, or external factors. You'll only pursue what you want when you feel like it, when it's convenient, when everything aligns perfectly. But the moment life throws you a curveball, or when things get tough, or when distractions come your way, you'll stop. You'll put it off. You'll talk yourself into waiting for a better time. And that's where most people lose. They rely on the temporary surge of motivation or the hope that something external will push them into action. But here's the secret. You don't get what you want. You get what you must have. When you shift from wanting something to needing something, your behavior changes. When something becomes a must, when it becomes non-negotiable, you no longer give yourself the option to quit. You don't rely on motivation. You create it from within. You build the momentum from your internal drive. You stop waiting for things to align and you start doing whatever it takes to make it happen. Think about a time in your life when you absolutely had to get something done. No matter how tired you were, no matter how busy you were, no matter how difficult the task seemed, when you had no other choice but to push through, you found a way to make it happen. Maybe it was a deadline at work or a critical moment with your health or a relationship that demanded your attention. In those moments, it didn't matter if you felt like it or not. You were driven by necessity and you made it happen. That is the power of must. It is the driving force that propels you forward, regardless of obstacles, challenges, or feelings of doubt. When something is a must, you're willing to do whatever it takes. You'll find the time. You'll make the sacrifices. You'll overcome the resistance and keep pushing forward because you have no other option. This is the difference between people who live their dreams and those who just dream about living. Let's take a closer look at this idea. When you want something, you're still playing in the realm of options. You have choices. You can choose to take action or you can choose to stay comfortable. You can choose to face the discomfort or avoid it. Wanting is passive. But when something becomes a must, your perspective shifts. You don't wait for a sign. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You act now because you know that if you don't, there will be a cost. If you don't take action, you lose. If you don't push through, you stay stuck. You accept mediocrity. Here's the thing, when you make something a must, you don't just think about it, you embody it. Your standards rise. Your sense of urgency increases. Your actions change. And the results you get will reflect that shift. People who have an I must succeed mindset don't waste time. They don't procrastinate. They don't fall prey to distractions. Why? Because they know that their success is not optional. It is required. They understand that failure to act is simply not an option. This shift from want to must is one of the most important transformations you can make in your life. It requires an emotional commitment. You have to reach a point where you're no longer willing to tolerate the status quo. You have to decide that the current circumstances you're living in are unacceptable. And when you decide this, something powerful happens. Your perception of what's possible changes. The barriers that once seemed so insurmountable no longer intimidate you. Instead, you see them as temporary obstacles, challenges that are part of the process of achieving what you must have. Your mindset becomes unshakable because you know that you will not rest until you've achieved your goals. Think about a time when you've really needed something. Maybe it was a job or the chance to improve your health or to repair a broken relationship. At that point, there was no room for hesitation. You didn't have the luxury of waiting. You didn't give yourself the option of quitting. Your focus sharpened. Your drive intensified. You found the energy to push through even when it was hard. Why? Because it wasn't about desire anymore. It was about necessity. You understood that you had no other choice but to act. This is the key to real transformation. It's about making your goals a non-negotiable part of your life. When you get to that point, everything changes. You stop waiting for the perfect circumstances. You stop waiting for the right mood. You stop waiting for motivation to kick in. You act because you must. You do the work because you have no other choice. And when you develop this mindset, you'll start seeing results that others can only dream of. When you're driven by necessity, you don't have to rely on willpower alone. You don't have to force yourself to stay motivated because the drive is coming from a deeper place. It's coming from a place of urgency and commitment. And when your mind is focused on what you must achieve, your energy, focus, and actions become aligned with your highest purpose. Nothing can stop you. Nothing. If you really want to see a change in your life, start by shifting your mindset from want to must. Look at the areas where you've been complacent. Where have you been accepting less than what you deserve? Where have you been tolerating mediocrity? Now, ask yourself, what would happen if I made this a must? What would happen if I made my goals, my dreams, my health, and my relationships a non-negotiable priority? What would change if I decided that this is the new standard I will live by? The moment you make something a must, you will stop making excuses. You will stop rationalizing why you can't do something, why you don't have enough time, why it's not the right time to start. You'll stop seeing obstacles as walls, and instead you'll see them as stepping stones. Because you're no longer in the game of maybe, you're in the game of must. And once you commit to this new way of thinking, nothing will stand in your way. You will find a way to succeed, no matter what. Turning should into must transforms your identity. One of the most powerful things you can do to elevate your life is to shift your language, especially the words you use when talking about your goals and dreams. Most people are stuck in the world of should. They should go to the gym. They should start eating healthier. They should stop procrastinating. They should make more time for their loved ones. But here's the problem. Should is weak. It's a word that represents something you're not truly committed to. It's a wishy-washy word that doesn't demand any action. When you say you should do something, what you're really saying is, it would be nice if I did this, but I'm not fully committed yet. And this is the place where most people get stuck in their lives. The shift from should to must is an identity shift. It's the difference between casually desiring something and fully committing to it. Should leaves room for excuses. Should leaves the door open for you to not follow through. It's a statement of intention that lacks urgency. You know, when you say you should do something, you're still giving yourself an option. But must is a command. When you say something is a must, you're not asking for permission. You're not waiting for the right time. You're saying, I have no other choice. This is a non-negotiable. The moment you turn your shoulds into musts, everything changes. You're no longer dealing with things that are optional or nice to have. You are declaring that something is essential to your life and your success. And that shift doesn't just change your actions, it changes the person you are. You move from being someone who wants to do things to someone who must do them. You move from being a passive observer of your life to an active participant, shaping your destiny. Think about it. Every decision you make, every action you take is a reflection of your standards and beliefs about who you are. If you live in the world of should, then you're acting like a person who doesn't really believe that your goals are essential. You're acting like a person who's waiting for the right moment or the right circumstances before taking action. But when you make something a must, you act with the conviction of someone who knows that this is something that cannot be postponed. You act with the focus and commitment of someone who has no time to waste. And that's how you begin to change. The power of turning your shoulds into musts is rooted in your identity. The more you shift from passive to active, from should to must, the more you align yourself with the person you need to become to achieve your dreams. It's about stepping into the version of you who has no excuses, no delays, no procrastination. This version of you doesn't hesitate. This version of you shows up every day ready to do the work, no matter how hard or uncomfortable. This version of you doesn't wait for permission. You decide what's important and you make it happen. But here's the kicker. You can't do this unless you truly believe that this shift is possible for you. You have to step into the identity of someone who follows through. You have to believe that you are capable of changing your habits, your actions, and your life. This is where most people falter. They might know intellectually that turning should into must will change their lives, but they don't believe deep down that they are capable of maintaining that level of commitment. And because they don't believe it's possible, they won't take the necessary steps. They won't show up consistently. They'll revert to should when it gets hard. And in doing so, they reinforce the belief that they're not capable of doing what it takes. And this is why making must a part of your identity is such a game changer. It's not about setting goals or wishing for success. It's about choosing a new identity. It's about deciding who you need to become in order to get what you want. And once you step into that identity, your actions will align with it automatically. The identity of a person who must succeed doesn't waste time on distractions. They don't waste energy on self-doubt. They don't allow fear to hold them back. They are clear, focused, and unwavering because they understand that their goals are not optional. They are necessary. When you shift from should to must, you stop giving yourself the luxury of procrastination. You stop putting things off. You stop making excuses. Instead of saying, I should go to the gym, you say, I must go to the gym. Instead of saying, I should work on my business, you say, I must work on my business. And the moment you make something a must, your behavior shifts. You start taking action in a way that aligns with that identity. Your time management improves. Your commitment increases. Your energy and focus expand. You don't waste your time on things that don't serve your goals. Your actions become intentional, and your results start reflecting that. The reason why this shift is so powerful is that it forces you to align your internal world with your external actions. When you make something a must, you're no longer operating from a place of desire or hope. You're operating from a place of necessity. There's no room for second guessing. There's no room for waiting. There's no room for fear. You must take action. And because you've turned should into must, you're no longer waiting for motivation to strike. Motivation becomes a byproduct of your commitment. When you make it a must, you take the first step and everything else follows. But here's the challenge. This shift requires you to face the reality that change is hard. It's not going to be easy. But that's the point. When you decide that something is a must, you're not waiting for it to feel easy. You're committing to doing it even when it's difficult. You're not relying on external factors to determine when you'll take action. You've taken control. You've decided that you will not let anything, including your doubts, fears, or comfort zones, stop you from achieving your goals. There's the power of turning should into must. You stop waiting, you stop hoping, you stop wishing, you start acting. And in doing so, you transform yourself from someone who wants to succeed into someone who must succeed. Raising standards means refusing to tolerate mediocrity. The first step to unlocking your highest potential is realizing that mediocrity is not acceptable. Too many people go through life tolerating things that are beneath them. They accept average relationships, average results, and average outcomes. They settle for just enough to get by. They let themselves be comfortable with the idea that good enough is, in fact, good enough. But the truth is that mediocrity is a silent killer. It doesn't scream, it doesn't shout, it simply lets you coast through life without ever reaching your full potential. If you've ever wondered why you're not seeing the results you want, if you've ever asked yourself why your dreams seem to stay just out of reach, the answer is simple. You've been tolerating mediocrity. When you're willing to settle for good enough, you stop pushing yourself to be your best. You stop striving for excellence. You stop demanding greatness of yourself. And when you do that, you give up on your true potential. Mediocrity keeps you stuck in the same cycle, preventing you from evolving and growing. Here's the reality. You will always rise to the level of your standards. If your standard is mediocrity, if your standard is just getting by, then that's exactly what you'll get. And over time, that mediocrity becomes your identity. You identify with it. You start to believe that this is the best you can do. You begin to feel comfortable in your limited circumstances. And that's when the trap of mediocrity sets in. But mediocrity doesn't just hold you back. It holds everyone around you back as well. When you tolerate mediocrity in your own life, you passively allow it to be acceptable in others. You become part of a culture that encourages settling for less. The key to breaking free from this trap is to raise your standards. Raising your standards means deciding that you will no longer accept mediocrity in any area of your life. You make a conscious choice that you are done settling for less. You refuse to accept anything less than your best effort. You refuse to accept anything less than your highest potential. When you do this, everything changes. Most people don't even realize they're tolerating mediocrity because it often shows up in subtle ways. It shows up in the way you talk about your goals. I'd like to lose weight instead of I must be healthy. It shows up in the way you spend your time, wasting hours scrolling through social media instead of focusing on your personal growth or career. It shows up in the way you treat your body, the way you speak to yourself, and the way you treat the people around you. These little decisions made consistently over time add up to a life that is less than what you're capable of living. When you tolerate mediocrity, you create a life that is average at best, and you rob yourself of the opportunity to experience greatness. Raising your standards means setting a new benchmark for yourself. It means no longer tolerating the habits, behaviors, and patterns that have kept you stuck. It means deciding that you will no longer tolerate distractions, excuses, or self-doubt. It means committing to excellence in everything you do, no matter how big or small. When you make this commitment, you're not just setting a goal, you're shifting your identity. You're deciding that you are someone who refuses to accept less than their best. When you raise your standards, it forces you to take a hard look at your life and identify the areas where you've been settling. It challenges you to confront the excuses you've been making and the habits you've been tolerating. It forces you to acknowledge that if you want extraordinary results, you have to operate at an extraordinary level. You can't keep doing the same things that have kept you mediocre and expect different outcomes. You must shift your mindset. You must raise the bar. Raising your standards isn't just about working harder. It's about working smarter and more consistently. It's about showing up every day and making the conscious decision to be better than you were yesterday. It's about getting rid of the things that distract you from your goals, whether that's negative self-talk, toxic relationships, or habits that don't serve you. It's about surrounding yourself with people who challenge you to be your best and letting go of the ones who drag you down. It's about putting in the work every single day, even when you don't feel like it, even when it's uncomfortable, because you know that mediocrity is no longer an option. But here's the catch. When you start raising your standards, it's not always going to be easy. Mediocrity is comfortable. It's familiar. It doesn't require you to push yourself outside your comfort zone. It doesn't require you to confront your fears or limitations, but greatness does. When you raise your standards, you're going to face resistance. You're going to face moments of doubt. You're going to face moments when you want to give up. But that's when you have to remind yourself that mediocrity is no longer an option. You've made a decision, and that decision is non-negotiable. You're committed to being the best version of yourself, and that means making the hard choices even when it's uncomfortable. The truth is, mediocrity will always try to pull you back. It will try to convince you that you're fine just the way you are, that you don't need to change, that you can settle for less. But mediocrity doesn't have a future, it has a past. Mediocrity will keep you stuck in the same patterns, in the same limitations, in the same comfort zone. It will never challenge you to grow. And that's why it's so dangerous. Raising your standards requires a different level of commitment. It requires you to commit to yourself, to your dreams, and to your potential. It requires you to stop playing small and start playing big. It requires you to show up every day as the person you know you're capable of becoming. When you do this, you begin to see a shift in every area of your life. You stop accepting anything less than the best. And the world responds to that level of commitment. The opportunities that were once out of reach become available to you because you've decided that you are worthy of them. You start to see results that you've never seen before because you're no longer settling for anything less than your best effort. But even more importantly, raising your standards creates a sense of pride and fulfillment. It gives you a sense of purpose and direction. It helps you step into the person you were always meant to be. You begin to live a life of integrity because you're no longer lying to yourself about what's possible. You're no longer accepting things that are beneath you. You're no longer making excuses. Instead, you're taking full responsibility for your life and your results. And that's the only way to live at your highest level. The process of raising your standards can be uncomfortable, but it's the only way to achieve extraordinary results. If you want to live an extraordinary life, you can't afford to tolerate mediocrity in any area of your life. Mediocrity will keep you trapped in the past, in the cycle of excuses, and in the comfort zone of average. But greatness will challenge you, will push you to grow, and will lead you to a life you never thought possible. So decide today that you will no longer tolerate mediocrity. Raise your standards and start living the life you were always meant to live. You are the sum of the people you spend the most time with. This simple but profound truth is one of the most powerful lessons you can learn. The people you surround yourself with have a direct impact on your life. They shape your thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, and ultimately your results. If you want to raise your standards and achieve greatness, you have to pay attention to the people you choose to be around. Whether you realize it or not, the people in your inner circle are either lifting you up or holding you back. The people you lift you up are holding you back. Your network is not just a collection of people, it's a reflection of your standards, your goals, and your identity. Think about it for a moment. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? What kind of conversations do you have with them? What do they encourage you to do or not do? Are they supportive of your growth, or do they hold you back with their negativity and limited thinking? The reality is that the people around you are either helping you rise or keeping you stuck. And most people don't even realize how much influence the people in their lives have on their success or failure. I mean, when you're surrounded by people who have low standards, who don't push themselves, who are comfortable with mediocrity, it's easy to fall into the same trap. It's easy to start accepting average because that's the energy and mindset that's being modeled for you. If the people you spend time with are constantly talking about what's wrong in their lives, what they can't do, or why things are too difficult, it becomes incredibly hard to stay motivated and focused on your goals. Their beliefs, their habits, and their actions influence yours whether you realize it or not. You start to think, well, if they're okay with mediocrity, then maybe it's okay for me too. But the opposite is also true. When you surround yourself with high achievers, with people who have high standards, who are constantly pushing themselves to be better, something remarkable happens. You start to adopt their mindset. You start to mirror their habits. You start to see the world through their eyes, and their belief in what's possible for you begins to rub off on you. They inspire you to raise your standards, to challenge your limitations, and to aim for something greater. The people you associate with act as a mirror, reflecting back to you what you believe is possible. When your inner circle is full of people who think big, who take action, who don't settle for less, you begin to see yourself in the same light. But there's more to it than just having people around you who are successful. It's also about surrounding yourself with people who genuinely care about your growth and success. People who challenge you to think bigger. People who hold you accountable. People who aren't afraid to tell you when you're slacking off, when you're making excuses, or when you're settling for less than your best. This kind of support is invaluable because it forces you to stay aligned with your highest standards. It pushes you to grow in ways you never thought possible. The most successful people in the world didn't get there alone. They didn't do it in isolation. They found mentors, coaches, and peers who lifted them up, who showed them what was possible, and who kept them on track when they faced challenges. They surrounded themselves with people who believed in their potential, even when they didn't. They surrounded themselves with people who pushed them to raise their standards and who helped them stay accountable to their vision. And the same applies to you. If you want to elevate your life, you need to start by elevating your circle. Ask yourself, are the people around you pushing you forward, or are they holding you back? Do they encourage you to take action, to go after your dreams, to challenge yourself, or do they settle for mediocrity and subtly encourage you to do the same? If you find that your inner circle is filled with people who have low standards, who aren't committed to their own growth, or who are stuck in negativity, it's time to make a change. Now, I'm not saying you need to cut people out of your life entirely, but it's essential to start prioritizing the relationships that are aligned with your goals and values. You need to surround yourself with people who are as committed to their growth as you are to yours. Seek out individuals who inspire you, who challenge you, who push you to be your best. Whether that's through joining a mastermind group, finding a mentor, or simply seeking out like-minded individuals, make sure that the people you spend the most time with are lifting you up, not holding you back. This doesn't mean you should avoid people who might not be as successful or driven as you. There's a place for compassion, support, and helping others along their journey. But when it comes to your own growth, you must be selective about who you allow into your inner circle. You must surround yourself with people who will elevate your standards and challenge you to grow. You need to be around individuals who encourage you to reach for the next level, who won't let you settle for less than what you deserve. Raising your standards means taking full responsibility for the environment you're in. It means understanding that the people around you are either contributing to your success or hindering it. You must take control of your circle and make sure that's filled with people who are aligned with your vision. When you do this, you create a powerful support system that will help you achieve your goals and keep you accountable along the way. You create a network of individuals who are not only willing to help you rise, but who will inspire you to rise even higher. When you raise your standards, you'll start to notice that your circle begins to change naturally. As you grow, the people who aren't aligned with your new standards will naturally fade away. And that's okay. You don't need to force these changes or feel guilty about letting go of relationships that no longer serve you. In fact, as you begin to attract higher quality people into your life, you'll realize just how much more powerful your support network becomes. You'll find yourself surrounded by individuals who inspire you, who push you to take bold action, and who celebrate your successes. In order to raise your standards, you must first raise the standards of the people you choose to associate with. Your network will either drag you down or lift you up. There is no middle ground. Choose wisely. Your future depends on it.